and made of silk and steel. By all marvel know, get off my sheets. Chapter 2. Okay, what's the best way to put this? I think, Foggy said, falsely bright and cheerful. Absolutely the fuck not. Matt was completely silent, which was worrying in and of itself. Karen pleaded with puppy dog eyes that were completely wasted on Matt, though she knew the tone of her voice would translate well enough. He'll take such good care of him, Matt. And he's really good with kids and dogs. Exasperated, Foggy turned to Matt and said, he shot you in the head. I was wearing a helmet, Matt pointed out mildly, more to drive Foggy nuts than to really make a counter-argument. He wasn't disappointed. Foggy made a sound that suggested he was dying. I did not just hear you say that, Matthew Murdoch. You did not really just say, all right, he said, to soothe them both. This argument is completely pointless right now. I'm not making a decision that huge without any of Jessica's input. I doubt I can make her love the idea of shipping Peter out of the city with a total stranger anyway. He tried to sound neutral, calm. Karen squeezed his hand. He was freaking out, and none of this was even a little bit okay. And this man was a serial killer who hunted people like them, and Matt and Jessica were endangering their son's life just by freaking existing. The rage which was normally so readily available to comfort him was nowhere to be found. Cold, mindless terror had filled every space it usually occupied. Even Fisk hadn't made Matt feel this kind of fear. Fisk had set his eyes on Foggy and Karen, and yes, that was terrifying. He loved them and worried for their safety, but Foggy and Karen were both adults with a certain ability to take care of themselves. Dare he say it, but Matt even considered them to have a higher than average capability of taking care of themselves. They were smart, situationally aware, and had good people skills. If nothing else, Matt trusted them to keep themselves alive long enough for him to arrive and beat the shit out of whatever was endangering them. But Peter was a helpless child who didn't know anything about Daredevil or Jessica Jones, and you're going to have to give him an explanation for why every adult in his life had started collectively freaking out about this. Shouldn't he just leave out the bits about Daredevil? Wasn't it better to give him this information slowly so that they weren't overwhelming him with this flood of secrets his parents had been keeping from him? Absolutely not, Foggy said harshly, startling Matt out of his thoughts. He blinked. Oh, did I say that out loud? You very much did, and no, you will not leave out the bits about Daredevil. That child worships Daredevil, and he worships you. Matt, there's no reason for you to keep hiding this now. That Jess will have to tell Peter the truth about her own powers anyway. It just seems like a lot of information to dump on a 7-year-old, Matt said, somewhat lamely. He knew he was making excuses, but Karen was the only person he'd ever willingly told the secret to. Father Lantham had made the connections himself. The defenders had all found out because of the unfortunate circumstances of their meeting, and Foggy only knew because he nearly died in his own living room. Matt, Foggy said gently, if you keep this from him even after Jessica tells him the truth, Peter isn't going to feel shocked and overwhelmed when he learns the truth. He'll feel like you betrayed Matt, and he will learn the truth because I'm not going to let you lie to your son forever. I wouldn't lie forever, he protested. We both know that I will get too old to be Daredevil one day anyway. Matt, he said in a tone that told him Foggy was rolling his eyes. Lying to him about the past is still lying to him. You of all people should know that. Matt sighed. Yeah, I do. It's just I sort of agree with Jess, he finally admitted. I feel like by telling him the truth, I'm stealing a piece of innocence from him. Wow, that's some messed up Catholic bullshit going on in both of your heads. Foggy answered mildly, with a hint of laughter in his voice. I'm honestly surprised that Jess was the one to get started on that first. Surprised, impressed, and more than a little concerned, actually. What? Matt said, a little blankly. He can sense the motion of Foggy waving a hand through the air. We've already confirmed that I'm not a good Catholic, but as I've reminded you before, my theological education isn't completely hopeless. We aren't talking about the tree of knowledge here, Matt. This is not some forbidden fruit that you're feeding him. You aren't going to impact him with original sin by telling him the whole truth. Foggy said, and a small snort at the dramatic edge of that statement. Though I'd like it noted that I reject the premise that you can shame and diminish someone with knowledge. So noted, counselor, Matt said, smiling because he knew Foggy was trying to amuse him on purpose. What I'm trying to say here is that Peter is not innocent because he possesses a lack of knowledge, Matt. He's probably the smartest kid I've ever met, and he's barely old enough to tie his own damn shoes. He's innocent because he possesses a lack of cynicism. You and Jess telling Peter that not only do his heroes exist in his world, but they live with him and created him and love him, won't do anything to change that. Probably the opposite, to be honest. Matt laced his hands together, fingers pressed thoughtfully to his mouth. After a moment of silence, he said, "Thanks, Fog." "Made you feel a little better?" he teased. "Yeah, you did. Now, can you repeat that speech to Jess when she gets here?" "Not one word. Not one more goddamn word out of you." Matt straightened up in the chair as he heard Jessica's voice, her distinctive stomping footsteps drawing closer and closer to the officer. "You made him run around half of this goddamn city while you were on a wild fucking goose chase." There was another woman's voice, higher and just as laced with tension. "Jess, I really am sorry. What did I say about talking?" Jessica snarled, her tone so furious it had Matt flinching from 200 feet away. He was already there by the time the trio of people walked up to the door, holding the office open for them. He raised his brows in Jessica's general direction and said, "You're early." "What can I say?" she replied, all deadpan, a thread of relief spooled through her voice at either the sight of or maybe the sound of him. "I just can't stay away from you, Murdoch." "Weren't you killed at Midland Circle?" Trish asked him curiously. Copying Jess's deadpan to an almost terrifying effect, Matt said, "I got better." Behind him, Foggy choked on air, coughing to disguise the sudden urge of hysterical laughter that was rising up. Matt hid a wince. "Oof, sorry, pal." Quietly, the strange male, Matt assumed that was Trish's friend Eric, the one who'd asked Jessica for help, murmured "whoa" as the three of them stepped into the office. Interestingly enough, the man seemed to relax slightly. He held himself with less tension. That was unusual. Normally, encountering the blind made people at least a little uncomfortable. Louder, almost reverently, Eric asked, What are you guys made of?" "Now, what are you going on about?" Jess asked, impatiently, flopping down into one of the chairs at the conference table in the main waiting area. "Remember when I told you about being near you was like taking aspirin? I wasn't feeding you a line, Jones." Eric made a gesture encompassing both Matt and Jessica. "The two of you together? That shit's like a Vicodin, man. I've never been this comfortable in my life. Whatever you two are made of, it's the good shit." What the hell is he talking about? Matt asked, tilting his head at Jessica so that she would know the question was meant for her rather than Mr. Good shit over there. He's got powers, Murdoch. Has this bad guy radar, I guess, she said, sounding disinterested. He gets a headache whenever a shitty person walks by. Trish huffed. He practically had a seizure when Salinger caught him. It's the reason we knew he was such bad news. Yeah, but these two are the opposite of that, Eric said, turning his head to glance between them. You guys aren't looking for a roommate, are you? Forgive me if I have a hard time taking you at face value, Jess drawled, rolling her eyes. I'm hardly the poster child for justice and good, and Murdoch's a real Boy Scout, but he isn't a saint. Matt snorted lightly at the irony hidden in that statement, rubbing a hand over his mouth to hide the shit-eating grin Jess always managed to bring out of him. It doesn't work like that, Eric explained tiredly. I can't walk past a man and know that he's 10 seconds from robbing a bank. It's a sliding scale of pain and it tells me how bad their intentions are. But the two of you, I've never meant well in my life, Jess asserted firmly. Oh, that's not true, Trish protested, sounding more than a little put out. Eric shook his head. Your brain doesn't lie, sweetheart. Call me sweetheart again, she said flatly, and see what happens. The statement stands, he said, raising his hand in a gesture of surrender. You've got a bad attitude for sure, but you're filled with good intentions, Jones, just like your boyfriend is. Almost on cue, Matt and Jess snorted at the exact same time. Well, that's terrifying, Trish concluded. When did you guys start dating? Never. We banged this one time 8 years ago, she said, enjoying the way it made Trish's eyes bulge out of her head. He's the guy who knocked me up despite being the drunkest human being I've ever encountered, she said with an unholy glee that filled Matt with existential fear. And Foggy said he had no survival instincts. Yep, this here is the man who is real living proof that whiskey dick is a problem which may be overcome. Jessica, Matt scolded, face twisting between laughter and horror. Behind him, Karen hid her face in her sleeve to muffle her laughter, which was nice of her because Foggy wasn't even trying. Stop telling people that. You were too drunk to remember anything. I can make up whatever crazy shit I want, and you have no way of knowing if it's a lie or not, she said smugly. Wait, so you never even introduced us, Trish said, outraged. You knew he was the father of your child, and you never even said? That's my fault, Matt said easily. I had no idea I was a father, and Jess was put in a rather awkward position given the circumstance of Peter's birth. Oh no, here we go, Jessica thought, watching Trish's eyelids soar upwards. Peter? She whirled on her adoptive sister. Peter? That is my son's name, yes, Jessica said coolly. So you got him back, and you were just never going to let me see him? She asked, voice trembling as she blinked stray teardrops from her eyes. You were just going to hide him from me and let me think I'd lost my nephew forever? There was real, true grief in her eyes. She looked almost hysterical with it. Jess had never seen Trish this upset, even when Kilgrave nearly made her kill herself. Unfortunately for her, Jess could twist just about every emotion she had back into rage, including her own guilt and pain. You lost any right to call yourself his aunt when you're the reason his grandmother is dead, she growled. Who knows? You might decide that his mother is dangerous one day too. Gonna shoot me in front of him, Trish? She was dangerous, Trish said fiercely despite her tears. She was hurting people and she was your mother. You couldn't see how dangerous she was? You shot her in front of me, Jess roared, going hoarse with the volume of her screams. Her eyes glittered with unshed tears, diamond bright and just as hard. She was gonna turn herself in, She wanted to have one last good day with me before they locked her in the raft for the rest of her life. And then you came high on that self-righteous attitude because Trish always knows what's best and murdered her in front of me. Trish didn't look quite so confident of her moral high ground anymore. But the three of them had grown steadily more familiar with Jessica's moods, and they all knew she wasn't done yet. What's gonna happen if you decide that I'm dangerous too, huh, Trish? You gonna shoot me in front of my son? That's different, she said weakly. Jessica, you. You wouldn't hurt somebody. You're not a killer, Jess. Oh, well, we both know that's a lie, Jess said coldly, and she flinched. Trish opened her mouth to reply, and Jess made an angry, dismissive motion with one arm. Jessica stared up at the ceiling as though calling on a higher power for patience, or maybe just reeling in the urge to punch her former sister. You know, it's taken me years, and now that I've seen it, I have no idea why it's taken this long, she said quietly, then with empty brutality in her voice. You're a child. You're a child, and you've always been a child, Trish. I guess we can thank Dorothy for that, too. I'm a child because I want the world to be a better, safer place? Trish demanded incredulously. I'm a child because I don't want people to suffer needlessly when I can go out there and do something about it? You're a child because you think that if you push back at the world hard enough, you can make it bend the way you want it to, she said harshly. And you refuse to see that all you're really doing is breaking things. Jessica held her hands out in front of Trish's face. Small, slender fingers spread open, the nails all neat and trimmed down, the hands of an unromantic, unglamorous woman, the opposite of her sister in many ways. If that was all it took, I could do that too, Trish. You can. Don't you see that? She pleaded, all confident and optimism. You could change the world, Jessica, if you just tried. You spent all these years trying to pretend you're not special, trying to kid yourself that you're ordinary, and ignoring your potential. That's the real difference between us. No, it's not, Jess snarled. The difference is when I know I'm going to break things, I can fucking control myself. Okay, Foggy said in his loudest, calmest voice. This is not something we are going to resolve overnight, and we still need to have a plan for Peter's safety. Jess, do you have any other information on Salinger we need to know? Yeah, she said with a snort. This is one sick asshole we're dealing with, arrogant too, Matt murmured. We've dealt with psychopaths and criminal masterminds before. He was trying to sound reassuring, trying to calm the angry, fast beat of her heart. A serial killer isn't exactly new. He paused, internally wondering how he should phrase the question. You must have found something today. Yeah, what do I smell like, Murdoch? She said sharply, her tone its most challenging. Come on, you know what it is, just say it. It came out all in one breath. He'd been trying to ignore it, trying to breathe past it the whole time, telling himself that couldn't possibly be what that sickly sweet smell was. Dead bodies. Jesus Christ, Foggy breathed. Jess nodded. Got it in one, Bloodhound. We are here 2 hours later than we could have been. I might add, because I spent 10 minutes down a hole filled with 6 inches of water and a whole lot of vacuum-sealed baggies filled with dismembered body parts. Jessica, Matt breathed. I lived, she said, answering him under her breath, a clever habit Jess had grown into when she had something to say, as she only wanted Matt to hear. It was a trap for me, Trish said miserably. He put some kind of gas trap down in his dumping ground. He knew if it were a choice between Jess's life and catching him, I'd choose her. Yeah, I'd hope so, Foggy said, with just enough of an edge of sarcasm to get a small smirk out of Jess. Karen stood and said, It's 2:30, guys, which meant nothing to Trish and Eric, but Matt faced Jessica. You want to get him? You could probably use the pickup. She scrubbed a hand through her hair. I can't touch him, Murdoch, not after. Matt sat up. It's my day anyway. I can give you time to clean up. Trish immediately sat straighter in her borrowed chair, eyes bright and shining. Peter? Are you getting Peter from school? I can do it. No, Matt and Jess said simultaneously, though in different tones. Foggy shuddered. Please stop doing that, he said, sincerely terrified. It's like you're both married and twins and like mind-melded super mutants or something. It's so goddamn creepy. Why? The two of them said innocently. Because they were both horrible. Foggy swore and made the sign of the cross as he retreated to his office with Eric and Trish, an act which he narrated loudly. Karen nudged Matt. I'll do the pickup, okay? Lower, she murmured next to his ear. You should talk to Jess about my offer. Jess called after her. Can you pick up Tessa on your way back? I left her with my neighbor Malcolm, and we should have her here. If we're going to tell him. If he gets upset, was her unspoken sentence. About the powers, about Daredevil and the guy possibly hunting and stalking him. She wasn't sure which would upset Peter the most. One good girl coming up. As soon as Karen was out the door, Jess narrowed her eyes at Matt. What are you supposed to tell me? Matt sighed. You're not going to like it. She might have a point, but you're not going to like it. Gee, Matt, the last time I liked something that happened in my life was, I don't know, the early aughts, she said, impatient. Not true, he said. It happened last month. Well, yeah, I suppose, she agreed, with her signature rapid-fire smile. Just spill it already. We have this acquaintance, Matt said finally, after a thoughtful pause, who would be able to hide Peter for a little while. Out of the city, he's military trained, special forces, and he's actually great with kids, dogs too. Peter could keep Tessa with him if he really wanted to. Jess's eyes roamed his face. What aren't you telling me? She said, staring into the red lenses. Because I know lawyers and I know Matt Murdock, and you're talking to me like a lawyer right now. What did you leave out? We're not exactly friends, but Karen's gotten to know him pretty well, and he and I have an understanding where he stays out of the city and doesn't try to shoot me in the head again, and I don't try to get him arrested and put him in jail anymore. At her open-mouthed silence, he clarified, because he's the Punisher. Oh, fuck no, she cried, standing up from the chair, and from the office, Foggy yelled, See, that's what I said. You should have listened to me. Jessica. She grabbed his arm to silence him, hissing at Matt in a lower voice so that the sound wouldn't carry. You cannot tell him that you're Daredevil and that you don't kill people because they deserve second chances and then send him off to the Punisher, Murdoch. Just, no. No, not in a million years. Okay, he agreed easily, shocking Jess into pausing the rapid pace she was beginning around the room. Okay, he repeated. This wasn't my plan, it was Karen's. I could see her point, but I wasn't agreeing to anything without you. You say no, end of discussion. Jessica flopped back into the chair, sighing loudly. You know, I'm kind of sad we're only attracted to each other when we're blasted. This could work really out. She blinked and re-examined that statement. Or we could kill each other. Or I could get knocked up again and we'd make the actual Antichrist this time. His nose wrinkled. Yeah, I'm a little suspicious of this theory Danny and Karen have going, that all of our children would be Peter perfect? She asked dryly. I know, honestly that's what has me convinced number 2 would be the spawn of the devil. No pun intended this time. The genetic lottery doesn't roll numbers that lucky twice in a row. Abruptly, the phone in Matt's pocket said, Karen, Karen, Karen. Flicking it open, he said, Hey, what's up? Did you have trouble getting into Jess's building? There was a short pause, but the silence was enough for Matt's ears to pick up the sound of a wet gulp. A familiar snuffling. His heart started dropping. Then Karen wept into the phone, trying to hold in her frantic sobbing. He took him, Matt. He just took his hand and walked away with him, right in front of me. Her voice broke and she sobbed harder. Chairs crashed and broke on the ground as Jessica stood up, trembling all over. I don't even know what he said to him. Peter looked so scared, Matt. End of chapter.